Robert Half research indicates 9 out of 10 hiring managers are having difficulty hiring. If you have open roles, chances are you're feeling this too. That's why you need Robert Half. Their specialized recruiting professionals engage their skills with their award-winning AI to connect businesses of all sizes with highly skilled talent in finance and accounting, technology, marketing and creative, legal, and administrative and customer support. At Robert Half, they know talent. Visit roberthalf.com today.
I absolutely love summer, and nothing says summer to me, Gretch, like eating outside.
Yes.
I love having friends over in the summer, and when I eat outside, I know that I need to get the things for my table from Wayfair.
Yeah.
Wayfair has such an amazing selection of home goods. I love the certified international melamine dinner plates. They come in so many fun colors. Then I can also get napkins to go with them. I can create a whole tablescape. And you know I love a great tablescape.
Yeah, I do.
Wayfair is the go-to destination for everything home, no matter your style or budget. Make your home a summer staycation destination for sun, fun, and relaxation. Find everything you need to summer your way at Wayfair. Visit wayfair.com or get the Wayfair mobile app. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home.
Hello and welcome to Happier, a podcast where we talk about strategies and ideas for making our lives happier, healthier, more productive, and more creative. This week is the second part of our Ask Us Anything discussion. We got so many great questions. We did half of the questions in episode 489, and now, as promised, we are doing the second half. I'm Gretchen Rubin, a writer who studies happiness, good habits, the 5 senses, human nature. I'm in my little home office in New York City, which is quite hot. And joining me today from Los Angeles is my sister, Elizabeth Kraft. Elizabeth, I hope that your office is not as overheated as mine is.
That's me, Elizabeth Kraft, a TV writer and producer living in LA. Gretch, my office is not hot, but it is quite messy.
I wish I could get my hands on it. So as mentioned in episode 489, we answered questions about family relationships and happiness, habits, the 4 tendencies. And in this episode, we will tackle questions that are loosely related to the podcast, writing, and our personal lives.
Yes.
So Lisa, should we jump in?
Let's do it. This is from Woolly Cats, who says, aside from a deadline, how do you know when you're done writing a book or episode?
Oh, interesting. I will edit until the very last minute. I tinker with everything that comes across my desk. So this is something where I will really rewrite something until right up against the deadline, I would say. How about you, Elizabeth?
Yeah, I mean, probably the same. I mean, in television, a lot of times we even do rewrites on the day we're shooting. I mean, once something is shot, then it's shot. But some people say the last rewrite in television is in editing. So even then, we may not be done. But yeah, and I mean, I guess loosely I would say nothing bumps us until we read smoothly through and nothing. We put CDB, could do better, next to things that we don't think are as good as they could be. So until there aren't any CDBs.
Oh, that's a good, I've never heard of that.
Yeah.
I like that.
There's also OTN, which is on the nose.
Ah, interesting. Daniel asks, how have you managed to keep the podcast running for so long? How have sponsors and ads factored in? Well, I have to say, we're so grateful for our advertisers because they are the ones who allow us to create the show and offer it for free. So we are super grateful that we have had the support from advertisers right from the beginning, that we feel so fortunate about that.
Yes. And I mean, we've kept it running because Gretchen, I mean, there are just new ideas all the time about happiness and good habits.
Yes.
You sort of go through your life with your antenna up.
I do.
Searching, constantly come up with ideas. I have ideas sometimes, not as much as you, obviously.
You've got a whole other podcast.
So the ideas just keep coming, and we get so much content from listeners, of course, which we never anticipated.
No, we did not. I think that if somebody said, what is the biggest surprise that you've had over the years of having the podcast? I think that we did not anticipate the degree to which we would be able to draw upon the insights, questions, resources, observations of listeners and build on that as part of our flow. And we were really lucky. We had Andy Bowers, Jacob Weisberg at the beginning who helped us come up with the framework of the show, which turned out to be a really flexible and resilient framework that allowed us to keep going with it. It's just a huge engine of happiness for us.
It is. Yes, we love it.
Yeah.
Jonathan said, Elizabeth, in writing for TV, how much are you working on ideas that you've come up with yourself? And how often are you, A, using existing material like a book or a reboot, or 2, working on an idea that someone else has brought to you? What kind of work do you like better and why? Also, what happens if you and Sarah disagree? You think something is a great idea and she disagrees, or vice versa? Great question.
2 great questions.
I'd say it used to be more 50-50 in terms of how much do we work on original ideas and how much do we work on existing material. As Hollywood has evolved, right now, the companies really seem to want to do projects based on IP, intellectual property.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, we're very focused on that because, of course, our goal is always to get a show on the air, and we're very practical.
Yeah.
The Fix, which was a show we got on the air, was based on an original idea. American Beauties, which is a pilot that never got made, but we sold it twice, was based on an original idea. So we've had
such
both.
a good idea. Yeah.
But definitely companies right now like IP. As for what happens when we disagree, boy, we just hash it out. We will talk and talk and talk. The smaller it is, the more we go with whoever's more passionate wins.
Right. Like if it's not a huge commitment, you're sort of like, I'll go along with you because I know you really care.
Yes.
Yeah.
If it's something big like a project, I mean, we've never really gone to the mat on that. We usually can hash it out.
Mm-hmm.
We'll just keep talking until we get to the answer.
Well, one good thing about being writing partners is your interests are very aligned. So if one of you thinks, well, this could be a success, and you have the same kind of values, you're not coming from wildly different places and you don't want wildly different things. For the most part, you sometimes have differences, but it's interesting.
And there are so many factors that go into making decisions that usually the answer becomes obvious over time.
Interesting. Donna asks, I am curious why only your name, Gretchen, appears on the podcast logo. Every podcast I listen to includes your sister. I think it's only fair that you include your younger sister's name on the logo. I thought the Ask Us Anything podcast would be a good time to ask this question. Well, Lisa, I'll let you answer that question.
Donna, it's because Gretchen does the vast majority of the work. It is her work. I mean, this is the work you've done for 15 or more years.
Yeah.
I am here to help elucidate, to be a sounding board, to be a differing point of view. But really, I mean, this is your field, and you come up with the topics the vast majority of the time. So I am more than happy to have it be your name on the podcast, and I'm just here as your sidekick.
Yeah, and I would say also, like, I do all of the work. The fun part you do with me, but all of the...
Yes. No, you come up with all the ideas. You do the scripts. You do the scheduling of guests.
Yeah.
You talk to sponsors. I mean, you do all of that. And
the show notes,
The show notes, yes. So you've more than earned having just your name on the podcast.
But I'm glad Donna asked, because I wouldn't want anybody to think that it was like a source of contention among us. It's
not at all.
We talked about it at the beginning. You're like, I'll take that deal.
Yes, well, because I have, a whole other job also. So,
but then you started your own podcast too.
Yes, that's true. And on that podcast, I do all those things. Sarah and I both do. So now I have an even greater appreciation, of course, of all the work that you do. Very time consuming and can be a lot to juggle. So
Yeah.
That's why.
Well, and maybe that leads into this next question from Blake, which is give us a behind the scenes of how an episode comes together. So I'll just sketch that out, and Elizabeth, you join in. So I keep a huge document where any idea that we have goes into that document for segment ideas. And then if Elizabeth has an idea, she'll often email me, or often it will come up in conversation because you are my sister this age. And I'll say, ooh, I'll put that in, the documents. Because one thing we've learned as writers,
write it down.
Write it down. There's a whole episode of Mad Men where it's about the fact that one of the writers forgot to write something down, and they're all talking about how awful that is. And then I also have a big planning document where it's each episode with the date that it airs and the date we're going to record it and any kind of notes related to it and anything that we need to make sure to include. Make sure that we know the date that we're recording it, and that's on another calendar. And then as the episode is coming up, then I start putting in the different pieces. And then Elizabeth and I, we talk every weekend where we're like, how about this? How about that? What do you think of this? Sometimes I'll propose several ideas, and Elizabeth, you'll pick the one you think is the best. Sometimes you have an idea, we'll do that. We talk about examples, ideas, resources, insights. If there's any research to do, I'll make a note and then go do the research. If we have a guest, then we have to prep for the guest. We have to read the book, or then we have to talk about what we want to ask that person. What else?
Yeah, and then we also go through listener emails, listener questions, or
hacks.
Responses, hacks.
Yes.
So that's kind of the other piece of it.
Yeah, we'll sort through that. And a lot of that I'll do in advance, sort of put it together. Let's say people are sending in emails, and then I have a team that helps me sort of like, let's put it, these are travel hacks, and these are exercise hacks, and these are ask us anything questions so that it can be reviewed. It's fun, but I love note taking, and so it feeds into that part of my brain where I'm like, ooh, what a fun hack to write into the list of possible hacks.
Yes, and again, I can't stress how much of this work, Gretchen, you do as opposed to me.
Yes, I do.
This comes from Sam, who says, what episode should a new listener start from? I always suggest, and then I get asked this question. Well, the nice thing about our episodes is they're kind of interchangeable. I mean, very rarely are they attached to time, unless it's maybe, a holiday episode or something.
Yeah.
So I would say start with the latest one. And then if they enjoy that, they can start going back.
I agree. Lindsay said, if you could write a book outside of either of your typical genres, what would you write? Oh, interesting. Well, Elizabeth, you are writing a book outside of your typical genre.
Yes, Sarah and I are writing a female-centered thriller.
I'm working on potentially doing a picture book, so we'll see about that.
That's exciting. Jessica asks, in past books of Gretchen, she has mentioned a writing project with Elizabeth, a YA novel based on a mythological story. What happened with it? Well, I actually started writing it, Gretchen, then it's kind of fell apart.
Yeah.
We were working on it with our friend Dan Ehrenhaft.
Yeah.
Partly, I think I flaked, and partly we weren't sure where the story was going.
Yeah.
What's your memory of that?
Yeah, so I wrote about this in Happier at Home, and we had a super fun time with it. It's based on the Eleusinian Mysteries, which is something that has haunted me and fascinated me my whole life. And I had so much fun, like, reading all these books about the little that is known about the Eleusinian Mysteries. Yeah, listen, maybe one day we'll go back and pick it up. Yeah, it was a cool idea, and then it just sort of got away from us.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that was before the podcast.
That was well before the podcast. Yeah. Yes. Maya says, I started reading Gretchen's blog over 15 years ago when it seemed like the process was a relatively solo endeavor. Is this accurate? You've mentioned having a team now. I'd love to know how this evolved and more about the people behind the scenes. How many people are there? Do you have social media help too? Regular website help? You found so many effective and enjoyable ways of sharing great information. I imagine it takes lots of work. Well, Maya, it does take a lot of work. I work with a great team now. You are right. For years and years and years, it was just me. Then I worked with an amazing person named Crystal Ellefson, who helped me sort of with digital media and things like that. She was fantastic. And then at a certain point, I realized I really just need more help. And so now I work with a team. And so, yeah, I have social media help. I have help with the newsletter. I have help with the app. I have help with the courses. I have help with everything. Anything that is written that comes from me is written by me, and everything passes through me. There's nothing that I don't, somebody else writes under my name. But there's so much work to be done with just like maintaining a website. This link is broken. What should the look and feel of it be? Oh, I have all these journals. So somebody has to design the journal and there's so much logistics around everything. So it's super exciting for me to work with a team so that I can do so much more than I could do before. That has just been thrilling. Like the shop, like all these things in the shop. There's no way I could have done that before.
Yeah.
Elizabeth, for years, I talked about wanting to do this and just not knowing how to move forward. It was a really good example of how I didn't ask for help, even in figuring out how to get help. And so finally, I managed to do that. It was a huge undertaking, but one that I'm thrilled that I did because I have a fantastic team.
Yes. And it's interesting now with working from home and Zoom, your team lives all over the country, which is just an interesting thing that never would have happened before. And I think that made it easier.
1,000%. I thought it all had to be sort of in New York City. I kind of had this office and I couldn't imagine I was like, what is this going to be? And somehow for us, for a while, I was the only person in the Eastern time zone. We're completely dispersed. And that works great. That's the way we were created. But I hadn't thought about that, Elizabeth, but I think that did make it seem much more possible because it was a reimagining of what it would be to like work with a team.
Yeah.
Probably I could have done it 10 years ago and I just didn't know enough to realize that. So, yeah.
All right, coming up, we are going to have more questions. These will be about our personal life. But first, this break. Lumen is the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath. And on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs and gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workout, sleep, and even stress management.
I've been using Lumen and it is super easy to use and very interesting to get your results. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs. Then you get a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You can also breathe into it before and after workouts and meals so you can know exactly what's going on. So if you want to take the next step in improving your health, go to lumen.me/happier to get 15% off your Lumen. That's LUMEN.me/happier for 15% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode. I am so excited to tell you about one of my favorite podcasts, Ask Rana with Rana and Brian. Ask Rana is at its core an advice show, but really it's so much more. Rana Glickman and Brian Safi answer questions from real listeners with the help of a little shtetl clairvoyance, impeccable taste, and their A-list guests, including Conan O'Brien, Patton Oswalt, Margaret Cho, Jesse Teller-Ferguson, and more. They don't have any formal credentials, but that doesn't mean they aren't right most of the time. I recently had the pleasure of joining Rana and Brian in their podcast where we gave advice on an exhausting colleague and ending a 25-year relationship. This episode and more are available wherever you get your podcasts. And if, like me, you can't get enough of Rana and Brian, you could join them on their Patreon for a more intimate experience, special bonus episodes, a monthly newsletter, and more. Or sign up for their curated cocktail club, the Ask Rana Social Club. Check out these offerings and more by the link tree on their Instagram. Ask Rana isn't just a podcast, it's a way of life.
All right, Gretchen, we are back with more listener questions. Natalie says, Gretchen, how did you know that you wanted to switch careers and move away from law? Was it a slow realization or did you have an epiphany one day? I'm guessing both.
Yes, I think it's one of the things where it happened gradually and then all at once, as they say. The big epiphany was I was clerking for Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor. I was walking around the Capitol grounds. I looked up at the Capitol Dome and I asked myself the rhetorical question, what am I interested in that everybody else in the world is interested in? And I thought, well, power, money, fame, sex. And it was like power, money, fame, sex. And it was like, felt like one big-ish topic. And I became so interested in how they were related to each other. And I ran out and started doing all this research and note-taking, which is something that I've done my whole life. So that was a very familiar thing to happen to me. But my interest just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I was taking so many notes and I was working in it all my free time. And then finally it occurred to me this is the kind of thing a person would do if they were going to write a book. And then I thought, well, maybe I could be the person to write that book. So part of what made the switch easier for me was it was less about wanting to leave and more about knowing where to go. It wasn't even that I wanted to write a book. It was like, I want to write this specific book. And that did become my first book. And so, but then I think gradually looking back, like I majored in English. I would always write papers instead of taking exams if I could. I went to law school, but I was really interested in more for the writing. I had written a couple of really bad novels, which I've locked in a desk drawer. So I did a lot of the things that a person would do to prepare themselves to be a writer. I just didn't understand, well, what kind of writing would I do? And then when I had an idea, then that's what allowed me to make the shift, I think.
Yeah, and you never look back.
No. I mean, I remember the day when I was like, well, I'd rather fail as a writer than succeed as a lawyer at this point. So I need to just try and either succeed or fail and then figure out what to do next. And then I never looked back. That's right. Michelle asks, I want to know how you two manage to read that many books every month. Well, we get this question often, Elizabeth.
Yes. I mean, for me, my reading skyrocketed when I added in listening. I listen to the majority of my books. And I'll just listen, in the car. I listen walking the dogs, doing Fryman Canyon, getting ready in the morning. So I'll sit on the couch for 3 hours and listen to a book. So that's how I do it.
And I don't know when I read. I feel like I am almost never reading, and yet I do read books. I know that I read a lot when I'm traveling, whether for work or for pleasure. I only read while I'm traveling. I never work in transit, so that's a lot of time. I will read for hours and hours and hours on the weekend if I can. But other than that, I feel like I'm hardly ever reading here and there. I recently vowed to start reading on the subway. That's made a big difference lately.
Yes.
But I don't know. This has always puzzled me, how I get reading done.
And again, I don't finish every single book. We're trying to make ourselves not finish books that we're not interested in. So it does happen sometimes where I'll say I'm reading such and such book, and then I don't end up finishing it.
Exactly. That's true.
And Gretchen, I have to take this opportunity to tell everyone, if they don't know about it, about Libby, which is the library app. And there are other library apps where you can check out audiobooks. It is amazing. It is a great thing that we have access to. And check out Libby if you have not.
I can't listen to a book the first time. I can only listen to a book if I've already read it, but I love to reread, so I'll often check out books and re-listen to them to reread them. And right now, Elizabeth, I thought of you because I'm listening to And Then There Were Five by Elizabeth Enright, which is a children's book that I have probably read about 15 times, and now I am loving listening to the library audiobook of it. It's so delightful.
Nice.
This is a nice segue into the next question from Erica, which is, what item purchased for $50 or less has been most life-changing for you and why? Well, Elizabeth, sounds like one of your most life-changing purchases was Zero.
Yes.
With your Libby app.
That is true. That is 100% true, Gretchen. It cost me nothing, and it radically changed my life and added so much enjoyment to my life. I also want to shout out something you put in my stocking for Christmas this year, which was the foot pedal anti-blister stick. I think it's about $16. It's a stick that you put on your foot, and it helps prevent blisters. And my gosh, it works. Doesn't seem like it should, but it does.
I'm so glad it was a good gift because I was like, this thing sounds great. The thing I would say, this is a very, very silly thing, and it's an incredibly frumpy thing, and it seems like it's such a over-the-top specialized thing.
Oh, I know what you're going to say.
Okay, guess. I give you 3 guesses.
Your electric foot warmer.
1,000%. You're 100% correct. This thing, also a fairly recent purchase. I use this thing every single night, and I am convinced that I know that I'm falling asleep faster and sleeping more deeply because my feet are warm, because my feet were just agonizingly cold no matter what I would do. And it was very uncomfortable. And research shows that if your feet are warm, you fall asleep faster. It's certainly much more comfortable falling asleep. And this foot warmer automatically turns off after 2 hours, so you don't have to worry about remembering to turn it off before you go to sleep, because obviously that might be tricky. I looked online, and the one that I bought is out of stock, so I don't have a link to it. But if you just poke around, I'm sure there's other foot warmers out there.
Maybe there have been a run on them since
maybe
because
I have been telling a lot of people about them, I have to say. It's a great question.
Kathy says, have you ever had color analysis? And if yes, what did you think? And if no, why not? Absolutely. I think I had mine done in 7th or 8th grade. Shout out to Sharon Frazier, who did my color analysis. I am a summer, and I think it's true. I think summer colors look best on me. There's summer, winter, fall, spring.
Yeah.
Gretch, I'm guessing you're an autumn?
I am. Good guess. Mrs. Frazier did mine too. And then I had them done again when I was in England. Remember when I was in that whole color kick and I was like, all I could talk about was color? So while I was in London, some journalist was like, oh, here's this great person who should do your colors. So she did. So that was fun.
And did you kind of get the same results?
I did.
Yeah,
I
so
did.
That's a fun thing to do.
A fun thing to do. Elizabeth, with your clean, confident, and current, you can be summer.
Yes, I know. And I need to look up again what those colors are and put them in the rotation if I have not.
Yeah.
All right, Gretch, coming up, more questions, but first this break. Whenever I'm gearing up for my next trip, deciding what to pack is always so stressful. The clothes I have either don't fit or worn out or just don't match. But then I discovered Quince. It's my go-to for high-quality vacation essentials I'll be packing for trips to come. Gretchen, I'm always looking for the perfect t-shirt.
Yeah.
I am so into right now Quince's organic cotton slub crew neck tees. I got black and white to take on our trip to England. They are the perfect tee.
The best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. By partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. Pack your bags with high-quality essentials from Quince. Go to quince.com/Gretchen for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/Gretchen to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/Gretchen.
This show is sponsored by MIDI Health. There are great things that come with age, wisdom, experience, a love of gardening and holiday decorations, to name just a few. But if you're a woman over 40, it can also bring some less desirable things. Hot flashes, insomnia, brain fog, moodiness, and weight gain. All symptoms of menopause and perimenopause. I have friends of all ages, and I have been hearing about these symptoms for years.
Yes, hormonal transition is a fact of life, but that doesn't mean you have to accept its symptoms as just another part of aging. MIDI clinicians are menopause experts equipped to support you with safe, effective, FDA-approved medications, as well as lifestyle coaching and preventative health guidance. All their services are covered by insurance, and they're conveniently accessible through telehealth visits and 24/7 messaging. You deserve to feel great. Book your virtual visit today at joinmidi.com. That's joinmidi.com. One thing that can be really frustrating as a parent is you see your child struggling with a specific subject. They need help with their homework, or maybe they're asking questions on their homework that, you as a parent do not feel equipped to answer. IXL Learning is an online learning program for kids. It covers math, language arts, science, and social studies. IXL is designed to help them really understand and master topics in a fun way with positive feedback. I remember how much Eleanor struggled with math, and I was not able to help her, and having IXL would have really, really benefited her.
If your child is struggling, this is the smartest investment you can make. IXL is used in 95 of the top 100 school districts in the U.S. Make an impact on your child's learning. Get IXL now. And Happier listeners can get an exclusive 20% off IXL membership when they sign up today at IXL.com/happier. Visit IXL.com/happier to get the most effective learning program out there at the best price. Okay, Gretch, we are back. And Linda asks, what does Gretchen do on the day of the Met Gala? Can she still go on her daily visit to the Met? Does she go along and stargaze? Oh, what a fun question.
The Met is closed that day, so I could not go. I mean, it was interesting, though. I went the next day, and there had been this giant potted plant where the information desk is, and I was wishing that they would leave it installed permanently because it looked fabulous. It was just this giant plant. sculpture. And I have never gone to look. I should try to do that night. I'll see how they've set up the big tents and they have barriers and everything. It's a whole big production, as you can imagine, to set up for it. So I see it before and I see it as they're taking it down. But I should go that night and just see if I can crane my neck and see what's going on or see people getting out of their limousines or whatever. I've never done that, but that would be a super fun idea.
Oh, would be.
Yeah.
It's kind of like going and looking at the floats of the Thanksgiving Day parade the night before.
Yeah, exactly.
Similar.
Yeah. Kayla said, Elizabeth, how did you decide you're a dog person? My family would love a dog, but I just see another creature to care for. I want to take the leap, but how did it work for you?
Okay, here's the thing. When we got a dog, it was really with an understanding that my husband, Adam, would do the vast majority of caretaking for the dog. So it wasn't on me so much. So that made it easier when you say, another creature to care for. I felt that he would do it. And I knew he would because he really is an animal person.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a dog growing up and loved having a dog. So I wanted Jack to have a dog. And then once we got the dog, that's when I became a dog person. It wasn't before. It was Nacho, our first dog, turned me into a dog person.
Yes.
And then I voluntarily started taking part in, all of the caretaking because I wanted to do it. Although Adam still is the one to take them to the vet, and he does the majority of it. But I walk them and feed them and all of that kind of stuff. But you know what? Just having the dog and then another dog brought so much life to our house.
Yes.
It's sort of like when you have a baby. You're like, what am I going to do with this baby? And then you have a baby and you love them. It was similar with the dogs.
Yeah. I would say a few things if you're debating, because I went through this as well. One thing that if you're really stuck between pros and cons, a question that can be useful is to say, which answer allows me to choose the bigger life? Because I think for some people, choosing the bigger life would be no dog, because it's like
Right.
we'd have the money, we'd have the freedom to travel, we have too much responsibility, it would really overwhelm me. But if you're like, oh, the bigger life, and I think you were like, the bigger life for our family would be to have the dog. And that's how I
Yes.
felt too, because I was very much the last one in my family to get on board. My daughters were begging for a dog. And Jamie's like, yeah, let's get a dog. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much work. So choose the bigger life.
Well, I have said this before, but what's nice about having a pet is everyone can agree that we all love the pet.
Yes.
So it's sort of a nice thing to rally around.
Yes,
and
it
I
is.
think that really makes a difference in the household.
Yeah. And I will say that the research is very clear here that pets in general really are a source of happiness, partly because of their unconditional love, partly because they depend on us. And that's a big part of happiness is, giving support. They give support to us and we give support to them. From the outside, I was surprised you got a dog. But then when you how many weeks later did you get the second dog?
I think
3
it
weeks?
was, no, it was about 4 to 6 months.
Oh, because it felt like in a flash.
I know.
Right,
That was
yeah.
a shocker. People were really shocked when we got another, but we love having 2 dogs.
Corgi Nation. Well, and speaking
Corgi
of
Nation.
dogs, and Elizabeth, your history with dogs, Anne says, tell us about the Snoopy suitcase. Where did we mention the Snoopy suitcase?
I don't know, obviously talking about childhood memories of some sort.
Yeah.
And I mentioned that in Kansas City,
Yeah.
we still have this Snoopy suitcase. There's a
Yes.
little suitcase, and inside are a bunch of Snoopy clothes and Belle. Belle is the female Snoopy. And we have our Snoopy and our Belle there. And I love opening the suitcase and looking at the outfits, the artist smock and the fireman outfit. And
The raincoat, the
Yes.
slick, the rain hat with the holes for Snoopy's little floppy ears to stick through,
Yes, and there's a doctor's outfit, scrubs.
and a little pink party dress.
Yes, there's so many cute outfits.
Yeah.
I just love it so much. It brings back my entire childhood.
It's funny that mom and dad did not keep that many. They kept the giraffe. How would you describe the giraffe? It's like something you sit on and you
Yes, a little
roll
a riding giraffe.
Yes, it's a
toy.
riding giraffe, Fisher Price, a couple the Fisher Price Castle, the Fisher Price Farm. It is so fun to see those. But yes, you were very into Snoopy as a little kid.
I
Elizabeth.
was.
I
I love
remember that.
Snoopy.
I'll post pictures of it if I can convince our parents to one of them to go take a few photos, and I'll put them in the show notes.
Excellent. Isabella asks, I've never visited Los Angeles or New York City, and it's hard for me to imagine what your neighborhoods look like. Can you describe where each of you live? I picture it being very different from Kansas City, where I know you grew up. Was it hard to adjust? Well, where we live is very different from each other. I mean, where I live is very suburban and actually is similar to Kansas City in the sense that everyone has a yard. It's different in that where I live is extremely hilly. I mean, I live in the hills, and most people have pools. In LA, that's a real thing that everybody wants to have a pool if they can. My neighborhood isn't that different, though. It's very suburban feeling. Aside from, palm trees versus pine trees.
I was just going to say the plants are very different.
Yes.
The feel of it is very different. But you have sidewalks, front yards, backyards.
Yeah.
Mine is very, very different from where we grew up. It's rows and rows of apartment buildings or townhouses with stores very close. Like growing up, we could have walked to a store, but it would have been like a whole journey. Like I think I did that a few times as a child as kind of like an adventure. Whereas here, within walking distance, a drugstore, a grocery store, a liquor store, a dry cleaner, like a home store, a fancy linen shop,
the bank,
a toy store, all that, right there. And then there's tons of public transportation. So Elizabeth, when we grew up, I mean, every once in a while we would take the bus, but again, more in the spirit of adventure than in the spirit of like
transportation,
getting around town. So it's very different. And I would say, as somebody who really dislikes to drive and who loves bustle and who isn't that into things like, I don't know, I'm very well suited to New York City. And Elizabeth, you lived in New York City for a while and you loved it too when you were here.
I always wanted to live in New York. I had no trouble adjusting the moment I arrived.
Well, our mother has always loved New York City. I think our father is enthusiastic now because we've lived there, and so he's sort of gotten to know it through us. At the beginning, I think he liked it like he would like to visit, but our mother loves the big city.
Yes, I will say LA was a hard adjustment for me because of the driving. I mean, because in Kansas City, yes, you drive, but it's very easy and it's short distances.
And the parking is easy.
In LA, you can be regularly driving, half an hour, 45 minutes.
On the highway.
On the freeway. And parking can be a nightmare. So that is the biggest adjustment I had. And I'm still struggling with. I still wish I didn't have to drive.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then the final one, and this is such a great question. Blake asks, you two seem really close to your parents. My sister, brother, and I are in our 40s, and we recently talked about how we want to make more of an effort to stay close to each other and our parents. Everyone loves each other. We just get busy with our own families, and we live in different cities. Do you have any advice? What a great question, and what a great thing to talk about as a family. Like, what can we do that will help us feel closer to each other? It's really something we're thinking about and working toward.
Yeah, and Gretchen, I think it's really the simplest way to do it to start with is texting.
Yep.
And text threads. We've talked about our update, which is great also.
We'll explain update.
Yeah, so the update is our mom started this, and it's basically just sending the family an update where you just say, here's what I'm doing. It's 70 degrees. I'm going to the doctor for a checkup. Jack had an English test. It can be just mundane.
The motto is it's okay to be boring.
Yes, and you don't have to respond if you don't want to. It's just letting everyone know what's up. Now, we did that a lot more before we started texting a lot. I mean, I feel like now we text a lot, which is even feels more immediate and sort of more of a conversation. I would say just texting photos and just thoughts, articles, just saying hi, asking, hey, I see it's raining there or the street's flooded, just the little things.
Right.
And then, Gretchen, another thing is the motto we decided of frequency, not length, or what was our motto?
That frequency is more important than duration of visits. Yes.
So we try to pop into Kansas City. We don't feel that we have to stay for a week. We'll just go for 2 nights. Even, or 3 nights, and then we could just touch base. And you and I often try to go together, which also is really nice.
Well, and the thing that we've realized recently is that we love going with our whole families or with the grandkids or whatever, but it's also, there's a different and really lovely atmosphere when it's just the 4 of us, when it's just like when we were growing up, and that's kind of fun in its own way. And so I think we're going to try to incorporate more of that. into. So yeah, but frequency more important than duration because you can feel like you've really connected with somebody even in a very short time. Whereas I think sometimes when you're going somewhere, you're like, well, if we can't stay X amount of time, is it worth the trip? Should we wait and go when we can go longer? It's like, well, if you can, it's good to go, even if it's just a short trip.
Yes. But I think keeping each other up on your day-to-day lives, really creates closeness.
It's surprising what a difference it makes. And then every time you touch base, you're like, oh, how did that go? And what happened with that? And how was that dinner? And it makes everybody feel like they're part of each other's lives.
Let me say this. I'm never not happy to get a photo from someone. I don't care what it is. I'm always happy to see it.
That's a reason why it's nice to have a dog, too, because dogs are always doing funny things. Or here's Barnaby sitting on top of the air conditioner. Yes. Well, these were such great questions. We had so much fun thinking about them and answering them. For links to anything we mentioned, the photos of the Snoopy suitcase and more, you can check out the show notes to this episode. It's happiercast.com/492. And of course, hit us up on Instagram, Threads, TikTok, Facebook, or drop us an email at podcast@gretchenrubin.com if you have anything you want to say related to this episode.
And what is the resource this week?
Well, along with many people, Elizabeth, for you and me, one of our favorite things to do in the summer is to spend time reading. And so if you want to get more reading done in the summer and you're just not sure how to get it done, I created a free resource with 13 suggestions. And one of my favorites is one that you mentioned, Elizabeth, which is Quit Reading a Book You Don't Enjoy. Why is this so hard? This is one of the great mysteries of life. It is hard, but it's worth it because then we have more time to read the books we want to read. You can find the full list of suggestions at happiercast.com/read more. And speaking of reading, Elizabeth, what are you reading, whether you are reading pages or listening to it in your ears?
I'm reading The Wives, a Memoir by Simone Gorindo.
And I am reading Playing Dead, A Journey Through the World of Death Fraud by Elizabeth Greenwood. And that's it for this Ask Us Anything episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as we did.
Thank you to our executive producer, Chuck Reed, and everyone at Odyssey. Get in touch. Gretchen's on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok at Gretchen Rubin, and I'm on Instagram and Threads at Liz Craft.
And you know what I'm going to say, but you don't know the rhyme that I'm going to spring on you today to encourage you to rate, review, follow the show, or tell people that you listen. Like what you heard? Spread the word.
Until next week, I'm Elizabeth Craft.
And I'm Gretchen Rubin. Thanks for joining us. Onward and upward. Elizabeth, you know, I have a special box where I keep all my most special treasures from my whole life. And in it is a little tiny notebook with Snoopy on it with a little tiny, tiny, tiny pencil and a little tiny, tiny pad of paper. And it's in that box because it reminds me of you, because I associate you with Snoopy as childhood Elizabeth.
Yes.
Little Elizabeth.
Oh, that's sweet.
I'll show it to you the next time you come.
Yes, I want to see it.
From the Onward Project.
Gretchen, you and I both love Whole Foods Market. I've been trying to be healthier lately, so I love going to Whole Foods and shopping their delicious salads. There are so many. Our parents love Whole Foods Market. They walk there at least 3 times a week, I'd say. There are so many good things to buy, and customers love shopping at Whole Foods Market for big sales like Thanksgiving and Mother's Day, but the fact is there are lots of ways to save on quality items every day.
Absolutely. Whole Foods Market makes it easy to elevate your grocery shopping on a budget. You can check out their weekly sales at wholefoodsmarket.com, which gets refreshed every Wednesday. That way you always know where the savings are. And remember to look for 365 by Whole Foods Market items throughout the store. Their store brand has all the quality that we expect from Whole Foods Market at prices that are terrific. There are so many ways to save at Whole Foods Market. Now you know.